Thank you everyone for coming to today's webinar. I just wanted to take some time to thank everyone for coming here. I know it's a Friday, and in some parts of the Philippines, I believe it's a holiday. But well, we're all here to learn. I'll be talking about how to teach fundamental movement patterns, and these are things that we do in our daily life. And a lot of these fundamental movement patterns we tend to find in the new PathFit course, especially in tertiary physical education. So I just thought of maybe it's a good time to refresh our PE teachers about how to teach the fundamental movement patterns. And I'll be trying to teach some of my tips, some of my tricks, how to teach it easier. So if you're, say, teaching a class of, say, 30, everyone has a chance to understand. So a little bit about me. I'm the program director and proprietor of Epic Performance and Fitness. We're based here in Cebu. We're a strength and conditioning and health and wellness organization dealing with fitness training, strength and conditioning for athletes, and everything in between, as well as education. I'm also currently the athletic director of Southwestern University, FINMA. I am a member of the CHED Technical Panel for Physical Education and Sports and Exercise Science. I'm currently taking my Masters of International Health at the University of the Philippines Open University. And recently, I just finished the Level 2 Strength and Conditioning Coach certification by the Australian Strength and Conditioning Association. So because of all these experiences, I just like to combine everything into what we're talking about now. So when I'm teaching you guys, I'm coming from a diverse set of experiences. So our objectives for this afternoon is, the first one is we want to understand what functional movement is about and what it's not, and how does that differ from other movements. We want to teach these fundamental patterns efficiently and effectively. So for example, let's take the squat. Just remembering 3 simple things to teach gets our students to perform the task proficiently. We want to familiarize ourselves with fundamental movement. And lastly, and I think more important, is how do these regressions and progressions fit inside a semester? So how do we more or less create a plan to teach these fundamental patterns, their regressions, their progressions within a semester? And the goal, of course, of all of this is to teach our students well so that they can do these exercises without any guidance, even when they've finished a course from all of us. So yeah, at the end of the day, we want to apply our learning to our students and make sure that they're able to do it for the rest of their life. Okay? So what is functional movement? Functional movement is movement for an intended purpose. It's dissimilar to training body parts. So functional movement is, for example, pushing, pulling. There is an intended purpose. It's not like doing just bicep curls where we're trying to exercise the biceps. We're always thinking about how does this movement functionally apply to our daily lives. So we talk about regressions and progressions. A regression is a way to make the exercise easier, and a progression is a way to make an exercise harder. So if you think of human movement as one line, like in your screen, on one hand, it's basic and easy, and it gets progressively more complex and difficult. And we want to challenge our students. And this is why we use progressions. Now, there are some students also that sometimes they don't get the movements, and this is the time to perform a regression. They don't get the movement maybe because it's too challenging for them at their point of physical fitness, or they just have some physical limitations that do not allow themselves to perform these movements. So to create regressions, we have the students do more stability, meaning you want to make them more stable. So for example, in a plank, the elbows, both elbows are in contact to the ground and the toes as well. You want to decrease the action of gravity, and you will see this later when I show you guys some video example. Of course, you can make it easier by decreasing the amount of work done, either by limiting the time that they're performing or the reps they are performing, and a lighter weight carry. For progressions, you can have the student do more work. The other one is to lift heavier load, make the exercise more complex, decrease the level of stability, increase the action of gravity, and increase the range of motion. So as we're going through the exercises that I'm going to be showing today, you will see some different regressions and progressions. What are the fundamental movements? I'm going to give you 4 fundamental movements that are very important in our activities of daily life. The first one, the first 2 is the squat and the hinge. Next one is the push and the pull. The third is locomotion, meaning there's movement forward and backward and sideways, and rotation and bracing. So the first movement we're gonna look at is the squat. So, hold on. So a squat is a movement performed with a greater knee bend. A hinge is a movement performed by bending from the hips, not from the back, but from the hips. So I'll show a video. And if you see, the movement is coming from a bend in the knee. I'll just show that again. So the trunk is going down in a vertical fashion, and the movement is coming from the knee. How about a hinge? A hinge, the movement is coming from the hips. So there is some knee bend, but it's not as much as the bend in the squat. Most of the motion is coming from the hips. All right. So again, let's review. The squat, the movement comes from a knee bend. You can see the knee is bending. The hips are going down. The hinge, it's the hips is driving the movement. Small knee bend, but the movement is coming from the hips. So how do we teach the squat? So these are the squat regressions and progressions. And I'm doing this in a manner that it's more basic. And as you progress through these exercises, it becomes progressively more complex and more challenging. So how do we teach the squat? At Epic, we have a very simple way of teaching the squat. The first thing I have our clients do is to get the feet, I hope you see this, in shoulder width. So the feet are in shoulder width, the toes are pointed out, the knee is tracked, meaning it's right on top the second toe. Okay, so the knee is pointed the same direction as the toe. And so we're gonna show that. So what I have the students do is I have them grab the back of their ankles and hands go straight and stand up. So by doing this ankle grab motion, it's automatic, their knees come out. Our problem with the squat, basically with most students, is their knees cave in, especially for females who have wide hips. Their knees cave in, no? So their knees don't flare out. And they lean forward. So when they lean too far forward, the movement is like a deadlift already. By having the student grab the back of their ankles. Sorry. By having the student grab the back of their ankles, hands forward, they now are able to perform the squat with good form. If I'm teaching 50 students, the squat, very simple, 3 cues. Number 1, feet shoulder width apart. Number 2, knees in line with the toes. Number 3, grab the back of your ankle. Now, when they grab the back of their ankle, they're automatically in a squat position. And once they stand, now they remember, okay, that's how the squat is supposed to be performed. The next progression is the body weight squat. Once they've learned that squat position, all they have to do is to do the body weight squats. And maybe for the first 2 weeks of school, you're just teaching the first drill. Grab your ankles, hands forward, stand. Grab your ankles, hands forward, stand. The next 2 weeks, maybe you're going to be doing body weight squats in your class. And then progressively, the next exercise that you can do is the goblet squat. Now, when we created these regressions and progressions, these are some things that you can teach either face-to-face, hybrid, or even through your LMS. Just upload these videos and your students will be able to perform the movements already. So, goblet squat. The goblet squat is holding a weight like a goblet by your chest. And what happens there is because you're holding something here, your back straightens. And this just teaches good and decent technique. So this is your goblet squat. Again, it's just a progression from learning the squat to a body weight squat. Now we have a goblet squat. All right. So goblet squat, there you go. And doesn't have to be weights. Your student can use water jug, books, backpacks, 5-gallon containers. So endless possibilities, and it's a good project for them. You know, show me a video of you doing your goblet squat with an object that you can use in your house. I'm just a bit fortunate to have a gym at home, so I use the equipment to demonstrate these exercises. Now, for those who have access to more equipment like barbells, a next progression is a front squat. So the front squat is the bar is on in front of you, and you hold it this way, and that just allows you to squat lower, keep your back straight. Next exercise is the back squat. So again, these are progressions. The back squat is a little bit more difficult than the front squat because the weight is behind you and there's a tendency of tipping over. All right, so this is our back squat. There's a bar behind the student and just go down. And this is something that if you have students in areas that are in MGCQ, they have access to a gym. This is something that they can do for their physical education work. And lastly, a more complex. So to make an exercise more complex, we add speed. And it's a squat jump. So the squat, jump, squat, and jump. So again, just play that again. Squat and jump. So this adds a little bit more complexity to our movement. So when we talked about progressions, we talked about decreasing support, right? So how do you decrease support? If I'm on 2 legs, I try to go into a stance that forces 1 leg to work harder. And so enter split squat. Again, a squat is a bend in the knee. So the first progression, the first regression, this makes it easier for students is to do the movement supported. Okay. So I'm holding on to a barbell in my rack and I'm just going up and down. And I'm trying to get 90 degrees in my front knee and my back knee. So if you can see that, I try to form 90 degrees in the front, 90 degrees in the back. Next is a body weight split squat. So if the student is stronger from a supported split squat, then maybe they can move on to regular split squats, body weight split squats. All right. So this is something that can be done. No equipment needed. Again, split squat. All right. Now, if the student got stronger, then you have to progress him. Because if you don't progress the student, they're just going to stagnate in their progress. So how do you progress it? You can add load. So load, I'm holding a plate and very similar. The same movement, just loaded. Okay. Now, to make things more difficult, we said add range of motion. So adding range of motion, we elevate the back leg and the student goes down into a squat. And because you increase the range of motion, more muscle is being used. More muscle fibers are stimulated. The difficulty of the exercise is increased. The stimulation that's required for balance and coordination is also progressed. So this, if your student is already good with a loaded split squat, move on to a rear foot elevated split squat, and maybe you can also load the rear foot elevated split squat. Now, similar to the squat, to make things more complex, we add speed and coordination. So a student can do split squat jumps. And this helps develop power and strength in the legs as well. So if you have students who love running or dance, this helps increase their leg power. So split squat supported, split squat unsupported. You load the split squat, then you progress by increasing the range of motion of the split squat, and then you make it more complex by adding speed to the movement. So the next exercise we're going to work on is the hinge. Now, the hinge, remember, is a bend in the knee, in the hip rather, not in the knee. So how do we teach? Sorry. How do we teach the hinge? Okay, we teach the hinge. First, I get a stick, and the stick has to be in contact with the back of my head and the back of my hips and the upper back. And I tell the student to stick your butt out as far as you can while keeping all those points of contact with the stick. All right, so I tell us, bring your hips back. Bring your hips back. So imagine, or something you can tell the student is, imagine that there's a door behind you and you want to push the door back with your hips. So automatic, they will bring their hips back. Again, hips back. And decrease the knee bend. Now, how do we add load? We do a deadlift. So it doesn't have to be a kettlebell. I just use the kettlebell. You can use anything, a tire, a bench. You can do this movement with anything. Okay. So 5-gallon bottle. I saw someone raise his hand. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon po. Can we still
Yeah.
accept some participants po na nasa waiting room? Ang dami po nila eh.
Yeah. I'll let them in first. Excuse
Thank
me.
you po. Thank you very much po.
Thank you. Nobody. I'm not seeing anyone in the waiting room. Yun. Okay. Okay. Moving along. Thank you for that. Um, okay, so where were we? Yeah, the deadlift is something that you can use with your students. Does not have to be this specific equipment. You can use a bench. You can use a 5-gallon water bottle. Um, Anything that's available. I understand that right now we don't have access to all sorts of equipment in our schools, you know. So this is something that can be used. Now, again, with the squat, both legs centered, now we can also use one leg. So to regress again, the single leg that. So if we can hinge on 2 legs, we can also hinge on one leg. So again, we start with the supported version. I'm holding on to something. Does not have to be that specific equipment. It can be the door hinge. It can be a partner, as long as you get the movement. And I try my best to keep this right hip pointed to the floor. So dapat when the hips should also look flat. Not one hip is opening up and the other one is pointed down. Both hips have to be pointed center and flat. Next is a single leg deadlift now. So once the student got stronger with the supported version, pwede na unsupported. Okay, so again, simple movements coming from the hip, slight knee bend, heel is coming up. Once the student gets stronger, then you can load the single leg deadlift. And could be this weight, could be a book, could be a bag, could be a sack of rice, whatever is available in your institutions and where the students are. Okay, for pushing, we have regressions and progressions as well. So the first progression to a push-up, and I see a lot of people doing kneeling push-ups. This is good, but the advantage lang with elevating the hands as well is that the student gets to learn how to keep the trunk straight. All right, so straighten the straight line from the ear to the back of the heel. And we said to progress, you change the action of gravity. So in this instance, gravity is not working so hard against the student. But if you want to increase, then a little bit lower. And this can be used sa bench, sa grandstand, and whatever is available. Just change the angle of the student. So from here, then it gets progressively lower. Next, the student can do body weight push-ups. So very simple. Key, very important, when the palms are on the floor, when the palms are on your floor, what you want to do is to grip the floor with your fingers. And what happens there is that motion of gripping strengthens the wrist and decreases the likelihood for injury. So whenever you have any exercise on the floor, on your hands, crawling, push up, whatever, grip the floor with your hands. So push up again. Very simple. Hands go to the side. How do you do push-ups? I try to tell people, get 45 degrees between the arm and the rib cage. So 45 degrees. Here, not 90, a little bit closer to 45. I'll play it again. It's not directly in line with the shoulder. Now, what if it's too easy? Then we change the gravity. So we help gravity act harder on us by changing the angle now. So instead of the hands moving, now it's the legs coming up. So feet elevated, up and down, up and down. So these are movements that help our students with pushing. There are vertical presses. So this movement is a horizontal push. I just did not include it as during this time of quarantine, maybe our students do not have access to a lot of equipment. All right, so pulling. So pulling, you can do this in the park. Just a piece of rope, you can pull on that already. So this is how we do our regressions for pulling. Again, I'm changing the angle. By changing the angle of my body, gravity acts less on it. So it's changing the angle and pulling myself up. So it's very important though for schools not to have gym equipment per se, but even playground type equipment, because there are so many things already that can be done with this. Next thing is an inverted row. We can change the angle again. By changing the angle, it makes it a little bit harder. Okay. Next thing is a forward lunge. So these are locomotion exercises. People might think that it's similar to a split squat. Yes, it's similar in a way, but a lunge is locomotion because there's travel. There's a traveling forward, traveling backward, traveling sideways. All right, so from here, I lunge forward. And my body is going forward. And I have to stop my body also from going forward. So I like this exercise because it teaches both acceleration and deceleration. So it's a lunge forward. About reverse, can also lunge in reverse. So these are locomotor type exercises. Again, forward lunge. It's a lunge forward. And you can also have a lunge backward. And okay, so that's one of it. Now, one thing we can do is a side lunge, a lunge to the side. Now, what I like about lunges, it's a good way to dynamically stretch the hip. So when I lunge forward, I open up the back hip, and when we're sitting a lot, the muscles in front of the hip get tight, and this contributes to back pain. So when we do our lunges, it's an active stretch for the hip muscle, the psoas. So it's a side lunge, big step to the side and back up. Now instead of stretching stretching the front of the hip, this is stretching the inner thigh while strengthening parts of the outer thigh. So one of the best movements for flexibility and coordination and performance. So again, you can load all of this by changing the load, changing duration, and whatnot. Maybe sliding on the back leg. That's also a possibility to progress or make the exercise more difficult. Okay, so for bracing, now bracing exercises are exercises for the core musculature. The core are the muscles from your neck all the way down to your pelvis. And the role of the core is to keep your posture straight, to protect your spine, to aid in the transfer of force from the ground all the way to your arms, and to protect your inner organs. So with that, these are some exercises that can be done. So our first progression is a quadruped. So it's a quadruped, very easy. Again, you're always looking at that hand that's on the floor. The hand that's on the floor is very important. You want to grip with that. Always want to grip with that. So I try to keep my trunk as stable as I can, nothing moving. So when we're training the trunk, the best way to train it is when there's no movement from the top, from the neck, all the way down to the pelvis. The next exercise is a plank. Very simple. Again, no movement. I'm just holding that position and I'm breathing. That's it. And it strengthens my core musculature. To make the plank more difficult, I decrease the base of support. So I take one hand out, and that makes the exercise a little bit harder. In my case, a lot harder. And to make it even harder, I decrease more base of support, one leg back, one hand forward. And I was not able to hold it anymore. So one arm forward, one hand back, and only one elbow on the floor and one foot on the floor. So decreasing that base of support is a progression to make the exercise harder. Bear in mind, we're not going to progress from week to week. It most likely takes 3 to 4 weeks in one exercise before you can progress to the next level. Especially sa scenario natin in physical education. So the plank was for the anterior core. We also have to work on the lateral core. So for the lateral core, we have the side plank. Now, I made it easy by increasing the base of support. So 1 foot forward, 1 foot is backward. I look straight ahead. One hand is pointed up to the ceiling. I try to maintain as best as I could a straight line from the ear down to the heel. So 1 foot forward, 1 foot backward. Very simple. Now, to make it a little bit harder, just decrease the base of support, and I stack my legs. So when my feet are on top of each other, the base of support is decreased. Right? To make it harder, now I add more complexity into the exercise by lifting the top leg off. So this is side plank level 3. So 3 levels of the plank. While we want to keep the core straight, we also have to work on rotation. Rotation happens in different activities. When we take a shower, we rotate. When we open the door, we rotate. When we lift the 5-gallon jug into the dispenser, we rotate. So we also want our students to be trained with these types of exercises. So most basic is a chop. Again, you can use different objects for this. Then we have a split stance chop. That is a progression. Just a little bit harder. And let me all right. So then we have a side split squat, split stance chop. So I split my stance. 1 foot is forward, 1 foot backward, and I rotate. And just to rotate. And while I'm doing this, I'm actually forced to balance on my leg, because if 1 foot is forward, 1 foot is back, the difficulty to balance is a little bit harder. And increasing the range of motion, I combine a squat to a chop. Squat and lift diagonally. Squat and chop. Again. And chop. And chop. All right. So very basic. Most importantly, how do we make sense of all of this in a semester? How do we arrange everything? The regressions and progressions, because there's so much exercise and there's so many options now. How do we create a plan, no, for our students so that when they enter school on the first month, um, they get used to it. On the second month, they improve on their strength and their fitness. On their third month, they even get stronger. And fourth month, they progress. So I'm just showing this table to you guys. And you can make your own. It's just a very simple progression, right? Using all the exercises that I showed you guys today. So the first one is squat. So the first thing too is learn the squat. Grab your ankles, hand forward, stand up. That's the first thing. And then maybe work on the body weights squat. And at the same time, siguro if you're meeting your students twice in a week, on the other day, they're doing a supported split squat. So these two things. On the second month, they do goblet squats, so we're progressing, no? Goblet squats and unsupported split squats. On the third month, maybe something heavier. Maybe do the rear foot elevated split squat and do squat jumps. On the fourth month, just build on the third month. So you always want to progress. For the hinge, do a kettlebell deadlift. Learn the hinge first, then do the kettlebell deadlift, single leg deadlift too. Add more weight, more reps, deadlift, loaded single leg deadlift, then progress load. Then your push-ups, okay? Hands elevated first, the first progression. On the second month, maybe hands elevated, but the hands are lower than the previous month. Maybe on the third month, now we do normal push-ups. On the fourth month, maybe the student can do feet elevated push-ups as well. For the pull, inverted rows, the first pulling exercise, then same as the push-up, you lower the action of, you lower the attachment and you increase the action of gravity. So that's inverted row number 2. Then we do chin-ups and then maybe pull-ups, especially for those who have access to these types of equipment. For bracing, students can do plank and side plank level 1. On the second month, add more duration to that, build their fitness, build their robustness, make them stronger students, even through physical education. Level 2 side plank, a little bit harder. So for the front plank, one hand forward, side plank, stack your feet on top of each other. And on the fourth month, increase plank and side plank level 3. For rotation, you can do kneeling chops. Month number 2, add more load and reps. On month 3, split stance chops. And on month number 4, base stance chops. So this is how you guys can work these exercises through the duration of one semester. And I think for PathFit 1, for PE1, having an idea of these concepts are going to help you as a teacher. Make your students enjoy exercise and most importantly, get them fitter through the course of the semester. So thank you for joining this afternoon's webinar. I'll answer some questions. I made a workbook for PathFit 1. And for those who might be interested in getting a copy or using it for their institutions, you can email me at tiosolon@bodybyepic.org. This presentation I recorded and I will upload it on YouTube so you guys can review it and hopefully add it to your students' experience. So once again, daghang salamat from Cebu. I hope that you guys learned something. If you want to keep in touch for whatever projects, that's my email. And I'll try to answer questions now from the group. So thank you so much. Daghang salamat, everyone. Yeah. So I'll try to get your questions on the right. So yeah, I think the part Q is a very, very integral, one of the most useful tests for physical education. Um, I think the functional movement screen test is a good part of physical evaluation, but I also feel for the students, for the teachers, because what if you have 100, 200 students, and if you have to perform the FMS for every single one, it takes so much time. So I prefer, my bias is towards using the regressions well and having a good understanding of the regressions. Because even if they cannot pass the tests FMS in the functional movement screen, you're still going to be using regression. So the way I approach it is I start with the regression and then progress the student once they are ready. Yeah. So any other questions from the group?